Okay, let's begin. This series of videos is going to be me focusing on the series of game Modern Warfare 2019 to Modern Warfare 3 that released this year. And the goal is to explain and analyze the script and the storyline to expose some of the propaganda that's lying within the scripts. And before we begin, I like to apologize for the poor quality of this video. I don't know how to make videos. I'm really here just to explain to you what's going on in the video. The video game, and it's not something that you probably want to watch. So maybe turn this on when you're in the car. It's really something for you to listen to. Um, the first thing we're going to go through is what is propaganda, right? Propaganda is something that is when you're intentionally providing misinformation and twisting the information to promote a political point of view, which I believe, and many others along myself believe, this franchise is deliberately doing. And I would argue that Modern Warfare 2019 is one of the most vicious, aggressive propaganda games I've seen in the market. The first things I want to get over with are the really obvious stuff, basically the blatant propaganda stuff, and I'm sure a lot of other YouTubers has already called this out a long time ago. Luke from We Are Change, he has done We Are the Change or We Are Change. His channel, he's done a short uh, analyzation of Modern Warfare 2019. It wasn't as thorough that I thought he was going to go to, but it's still pretty thorough. So go check out his video. Uh, so before I get into those parts, I want to be 100% transparent and I want to give you my point of view and a little bit of things about myself because I am doing a political and geopolitical video analysis. I want the audience to understand where I am coming from. I am a recent convert to Orthodox Christianity, not Russian. I am in the Greek church. So just so some people don't call me a Russian propagandist or anything, because of some of the stuff that we're going into. And if you don't know, the Greek church is actually in schism with the Russian church at the moment. So that and socially, politically, I am an isolationist and I would fall in the conservative side if you would like to classify me as such. So that is it about me, and those things could in many ways affect my view that I'm going to present to you. But here we go. So we're going to talk about the three main types of propaganda we see in this game. We have social propaganda, which is just a tiny little part of it. We see feminism, basically Farah, Farah, what's her name? Farah, Kareem. We're having women basically leading Islamic Muslim fighting groups, which is very uncommon, and you probably won't find any of this stuff in real life because Islam is very anti-woman. uh, but that's just a small part of it. And then we have the political historical propaganda. This is where they really tilted the actual story. I mean, they're actual stories and trying to paint another narrative to it. Highway of Death is a big one, and other YouTubers has mentioned this before. Highway of Death is a actual place in the Middle East where in the game it's portrayed as Russians bombing, escaping. There was a highway filled with escaping civilians, and the Russians bombed it. That's how it was portrayed in the game. However, in real life, it was actually the United States that did that, and they claim that because they're militants that are in there, like always, it was justified. But I'll leave that up to you. Just letting you know that the narrative was completely switched in the game. Gassing, obviously, there is a scene, very disturbing scene, um, and this is tied with dehumanization that we're going to get into, where the Russians, when they initially invaded Urzikstan, gassed the entire town and killed a lot of people. And this is actually, you would argue, this actually probably happened when the Soviet Union invaded the Middle East back in its days. However, this game, the reason why they redid Modern Warfare is they want people to be able to sympathize with the story. They want to move the story to present day scenario. So it's saying that the Russians gassed a lot of civilians and militants, right? However, Russia didn't do that in recent history. It was the United States that actually assisted Saddam Hussein to use gas on civilians, and it is the United States that have deployed this tactic in Fallujah and the occupation. So we do see the brutal occupation of General Barkov's Russian forces, and that I am going to separate that faction from the Russian government forces. General Barkov's forces basically are brutally occupying Urzikstan. I believe, personally, I believe that would be Syria, representing the Syrian government, and I'll get into that in a little bit. However, this is not happening in present day. You would argue, I mean, the only people who are occupying the Middle East uninvited are the United States and, in a broader aspect, Israel. The third point we're going to get to is psychological propaganda. Dehumanization that we've seen in the gas mission, where you play as Farah and you have to escape, but you end up getting captured anyways. Basically, in the mission that you're seeing, Russians are the soldiers are being forced to deploy gas and kill all survivors in villages. This didn't happen, by the way. This is not. Israel has done similar shit, but the Russians didn't do this in recent years. You could argue the Bucha massacre, which I believe, from my investigation along many journalists, independent journalists, is a hoax. But that's another video. But this is, in the context of the Middle East, this is not what actually happened in recent years. We are dealing with recent years again because this is a modern game, right? It's literally the developers said it. It's going to be put in a modern scenario and reflecting what we're actually dealing with today. So I want to be true to that. And dehumanization really came to when you have to play as Farah to escape a really strong and buff Russian soldier who is maybe trying to kill the kids. So there's a few aspects of dehumanization that we're talking about. So the dehumanization is basically, you're hurting children, right? You're gassing children and you're trying to murder children. So that's very bad already. But the other part is the dehumanization of, I guess, intelligence, right? It's insulting the Russian intelligence. So you're having a soldier that's what, 6'3", 6'4", versus two kids that's barely 5 feet high or 4 foot high, and getting killed by two kids. So you're a buff Russian soldier getting killed by two kids. So that is insulting the Russian intelligence. That's what they're trying to do here. But that is why, a part of the reason why I'd say it's very vicious the way they did it, is that I don't believe any modern army would necessarily go to that extent, especially Russia as a Orthodox Christian nation. It's hard to believe that that stuff would be actually happening. Yes, Russia has a official religion, which is the Orthodox Christian religion. But yeah, this is another YouTuber actually voiced this out. This is really unnecessary. This stuff is unnecessary. It's like you're going out of your way to insult somebody's intelligence and demoralize, dehumanize the person, right? Because in Christianity, we believe that, you know, we in traditional Christianity at least, we don't believe the doctrine of sola fide. Just real quick little religious lesson here. We believe that children are the most precious stage of mankind, and hurting them is such a great sin. Uh, you know, all that stuff. But that's another conversation. But here are basically the three biggest propaganda that we see here. The next part, we're going to go into the narrative, right? And we're going to examine the script and the symbolisms on what these factions are actually doing. And this is the part that I think 2019 wasn't that bad, but in Modern Warfare 2, it really gets stupid and bizarre. Now I want to talk about the factions that's in this game, right? There are a few factions that I'm not mentioning here, like the Makarov and Zakhaev faction, because I don't think that's really relevant at this point. We're gonna go with the main antagonist and the protagonist, right? So the antagonist, we have the Russians, right? We have the pro-West Russians, right? These guys are like, what's his name? Nikolai. These guys are pro-West Russians, right? Uh, many times it's mentioned in the game that they're good Russians, they're bad Russians. Who are the good Russians? The ones who are pro-West. The bad Russians are the ones who serve the Russian country, obviously. And Nikolai is one of the outliers that are basically supporting the West, and they want Russia to be like the West. And if Russia does something that's not according to its value, that violates the Western value, or it's really not value, it's agenda, it's the person's a bad Russian. And we have two other groups of Russians, and I do like to separate this. We have the government Russians, which is Sergeant Kamarov. Believe it or not, I don't put Kamarov in the same camp as Nikolai, because he is a Russian government soldier that works for the federal government of Russia, and these people are there to serve Russian interests, which is to eliminate terrorists legitimately, right? So a few of the other people that are involved in the government Russian faction would be Nikto, the Bale brothers, and Rodion, all those guys, and they're not really important in the main story, right? But what we really got to look at is the Barkov Russians. So the Barkov Russians are technically also government Russians, because General Barkov is a Russian general, and it is obviously authorized for him to go into Urzikstan. And they are basically government Russians, but they're more extreme in their attitude towards Urzikstan, and they are the ones who are occupying Urzikstan. So they would be the general antagonist of this game, Modern Warfare 2019. Now we have Urzikstan. There's two groups that comes out of this faction here. We have Farah's group, which is the group that's created directly as in response to the Barkov, or you could say the Russian occupation of Urzikstan. And then we have Alcatel, and I call it Urzikstan first. Basically, this is, from my understanding, they were one group with Farah, and then they split because Alcatel believes that they're not just against Russian occupation, they want the American and NATO bases out of there as well, which I respect that, but yeah, that's all the faction we have. Then we have, oh, sorry, excuse me. Now we have NATO, which is the base we have there, and Captain Price. So now we're going to get to this rough part here. We're going to talk about reflection and symbolism, right? So the general story that we see here is General Barkov is there fighting with Alcatel and Farah. Obviously, he's occupying Urzikstan, and Captain Price with NATO. Americans are also there, right? And they're fighting a proxy war against General Barkov's Russians. with allying with Farah, and it was first revealed that they were allied together, and then when Al-Qatala became anti-American, now they're terrorists. That sounds very, very uh, familiar, I guess. So what are these things actually? What are these factions actually representing, right? So I have option A listed here. Option one. This is for goobers, and it is for goobers. Is that if you don't actually understand what's going on, this is what you'll think. So it's NATO, right? NATO is NATO. It's the I call it the American Justice League, which they're assisting the Urzikstan fighters, mainly Farah's faction, against the tyrannical government, Russia, which could represent a mixture of things: Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Syrian. I believe it's the Syrian government that they're referencing, and Farah's group will be the Syrian opposition. But again, that's also not fully true because Russia was invited to Syria, and I wouldn't be fair to say it's an occupation, but it would make more sense to paint it's pretty difficult at this point, but this is what you usually think is going on here if you're if you don't really put too much mind in there. And I think the key to all this lies in one person, and it's not any of the protagonists. It is the main antagonist of the story, which is General Barkov, right? So that description of his bio is, I believe, found in the game files where you collect certain things. And I copied a part of his bio from the Call of Duty Wiki site. And let's read through it. So in 1999, as a lieutenant, Roman Barkov led an assault in the resource-rich region of northeastern Urzikstan. And it was annexation, whatever, and seeing Urzikstan as a breeding ground for terrorists and willing to do anything to protect his homeland, Barkov deployed chlorine gas-tipped bombs and unknown nerve agents. Their deployment was unauthorized by the Russian leadership. The rogue attacks sent civilians streaming into local hospitals, which were then struck by Russian warplanes. That sounds familiar in 2014 to 2024. So notice I'm not referencing Ukraine in this equation because this is set in the Middle East. So we have to be faithful to what's actually going on here, right? To the context of the story. So from this paragraph, what we understand is that the context of Russia, General Barkov's Russians invading Urzikstan and occupying is because of terrorism. And obviously we would suspect that there were Urzikstan Islamic terrorists that attacked parts of Russia, which triggered this situation here. If you guys see where I'm going, you know exactly what the narrative is here, actually. But if we analyze Roman Barkov, he is a Russian patriot. I think it's absolutely 100% safe to say that he is a patriot. He is doing this because he believes what he's doing is benefiting Russia, and he's actually killing terrorists. And if we listens to the way he talks to Urzikstanians and Farah, there's a mission that you obviously the one that you play as Farah to kill him. There's also one where Farah is captured and he's trying to torture Farah for information. If you listen to what he says, I think it is 100% fair. Again, when we analyze characters, we're obligated to represent their position and what they believe honestly, right? I think it's fair to say that General Barkov sincerely 100% believes that Urzikstanians are terrorists, and I think it is fair to say that he sincerely believes that he is that he sincerely despises Russia. I'm sorry, Farah. He dislikes Farah, and he sees her and her people, her culture, as terrorism. I think it is fair to say that, at least. Okay, so essentially, this is what we see that it portrays Russia doing, right? And we have Russians invading the Middle East with the reason to stop terrorism. Sounds familiar, right? Occupies and then gassing, right? That sounds also very familiar. And the Highway of Death, apparently they did it in the game, and this isn't actual stuff that happened, right? And bombing hospital, right? And I don't recall Russia bombing civilian hospitals in recent years in the Middle East. In the Middle East, I'm talking about the Middle East. But what did actually happen is that there's an incident in Raqqa where where NATO and or United States allies bombed a hospital when fighting ISIS. There's some controversies in there, but that's up to you to look. And but if you look, funny thing, if you look at that hospital, you would see that there's a mission where you in the game that you play as Alex with the Marines that you're going to capture the wolf in that hospital. I believe, from my personal observing, is that they're basing that hospital in Raqqa as hospital as the hospital in the game, right? And on the other hand, NATO is the one that's friendly to the local government. So really, this is not even. I mean, I have to say that this game is doing a great job. I mean, the propaganda they're tackling every stage of propaganda perfectly, but their script just sucks, right? They're literally basically having the Russians there doing everything that the United States actually did in recent years in the Middle East, and having I just completely 360 the narrative. And the NATO is the one that's friendly to the local government, to people like Farah. And that's just insane because Russia is actually the only, they're the ones that are invited by the Syrian government into Syria. So now we look at this is what they're trying to portray to the goobers. It's insanity. So what is Barkov's Russians actually symbolizing? I would say it's the United States and Israel occupying whatever it is. It's not the actual Russian military that's doing this stuff. So this is why this is overwhelming evidence of propaganda, because you're using actual things that happened in the world, you're making them into a game, and which is media, which is a part of media, and then you're twisting the narrative, right? That is blatant propaganda. It is there to build a narrative of the player base based on something. And I know there's going to be some teenage effeminate queer bait that's going to come on here and tell me, "Oh no, I'm not. I don't care about propaganda. I'm just here to play the game." I understand that. You're just here to play the game. I'm here to play the game too. Although I'm not that good at the game, I'm an average player. You'll see me in the middle of the scoreboard every game. But my point is for you guys to see this stuff. And if you're gonna come on here and say, "Oh, this is too extra," and I don't care about the propaganda, yeah, that's the point. That's exactly my point. The point of propaganda is like, hey, I'm spreading fake information, and I want you to believe it. That's not propaganda. Propaganda is supposed to be secretive. It's supposed to be bit by bit, and it's trying to train your brain to see things in a way, in a certain point of view. That's what it is, right? Now, I guess this video is going to stop here, and we're going to get into Modern Warfare 2 very soon, and Modern Warfare 3. I think that should be one video, and that is where things really get interesting, because the script is bad, the propaganda is also bad, and the script actually contradicts itself in Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. And when I was playing through that game, Modern Warfare 2 and 3, It just felt very uncomfortable and completely nonsense. But this will wrap out Modern Warfare 2019. Yeah, I'm not here to really grow the channel or something. This channel is just me talking whatever I want. There's gonna be a lot of religious stuff coming up in the future maybe, and yeah, the last thing I'll say is like when you play video games or listen to anything, please do your own research, right? Especially when it's related to world politics and war, because this stuff is dangerous. It really is dangerous. Who are the people? Who are the main player base of Call of Duty? Teenagers and young adults. And that's the period when the human minds form worldview, and this is what they're targeted as. Really is complete baloney, right? But anyways, well, we'll end this video here. Uh, I hope this kind of helps some people seeing through these things. I hope a lot of people have seen through this stuff already. But yeah. Anyways, I'm out.